light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. It seems as we go through life, one thing that almost everyone has in common is that we want to be together. We want to have a sense of community around us. Sometimes that can get people into trouble because we look to the community to be our definition, to tell us who we are, and no community can do that. Who we are has to do with the treasures and the perspectives and feelings, the unique qualities within us that may be similar to those in other people, but they're never exactly the same. Just like snowflakes, there's no two people on Earth, even identical twins, who are exactly the same in every way. Even with identical twins, there are differences in emotions, in thoughts, in strategies of how to deal with life. Some who want to blend in and some who want to stand out. Some who want to be distinct and some who want to be the same. None of this has to be a problem if we're willing to celebrate it. The thing to remember about community is formed by the individuals coming together. Communities don't exist unless individuals come together. And if individuals come together and abandon all of their individuality and all of their uniqueness, all of the treasures and gifts that the individual have to offer, you wind up with a shell that has lost its humanity, that has lost its ability to be genuinely creative and do new things and invent things and have life be this ongoing, expanding adventure of discovery. Discovery comes from individuals, not from communities. Communities, in essence, renew themselves by nurturing their individuals, no matter how anomalous those individuals might be. Individuals, conversely, survive by contributing to their communities, by finding someone who will listen, someone who will appreciate the creativity, the ingenuity that they have to contribute. The wonderful thing in the midst of all that, I guess, is that we can go through life being as different as we want to be and still hold hands. There are as many different ways to look and act and live as there are people, or more, because there's always new ways being invented. There's no one single person who could represent everybody and all of the possible diversity you might encounter under that heading. You know, when someone says, what does a gay person look like? Well, which one? What does an Italian look like? What does a Frenchman look like? What does a Chinese woman look like? There may be some commonalities, but there's a whole lot of differences. And in amongst even the things that are common, there are still anomalies. There's no group that's 100% the same, because we're not clones of each other. And even if we were clones of each other, I strongly suspect our personalities would diverge, so you'd still wind up with differences. None of which is a problem if we maintain sufficient civility and mutual respect that we can join hands and walk down the street together and try to show the world, to show the youth of the world, that whoever you are, whatever you find yourself to be, it's okay. Be yourself, because you're God's gift to the world in a very real sense. But it doesn't mean, just because you're God's gift to the world, doesn't mean that there is no development to do. God may give you a lump of clay and say, there's your potter's wheel. You know, the earth is spinning through day and night and so forth. In a sense, the earth is like one big potter's wheel, and we're all lumps of clay on the potter's wheel. And we can apply pressure in various ways. We can apply more water, less water, drying out, putting different glazes on ourselves so that we can be different colors, serve different uses. One pot may be used in the kitchen, another may be a flower vase, another may be a candy dish in the living room, all sorts of different things. The choice begins, however, I would say, with looking in the mirror and figuring out who and what you are. And that is not something that's going to be quickly and easily answered, more so because it keeps changing throughout life. And so in that sense, this line of people leading a pride parade is analogous to a line of people leading the march of life through time. That just as you can march down the street and say, here I am what I am, and I'm proud of who I am not willing to be ashamed of myself, I'm not willing to hide who I am just because it isn't exactly what somebody else might prefer. They're not what I would prefer either. So, now that we have mutual disapproval, we can be civil to each other and respectful and recognize that the world is a shared space. In a similar sort of way, it's like we're marching through time, and we're marching through different eras and seasons, and the forces that shape whole societies or whole countries. I know what I want for you, I know what this person wants for you, I know what that person wants for you. I don't know what you yourself want. And to accept that what anyone wants, child or adult, may change over the next 5 years, over the next 5 months. And recognizing all of that, to recognize that that too can be something good, and to find a world that helps each individual sort through the changes and the possibilities and the opportunities and the decisions to find the genuinely most effective and beautiful outcome, so that we're not only running in place, but we're actually moving forward in our own lives and as a community and as a nation and as a world. That we are leaving behind the conflict and the war because we're improving our minds to where we can communicate, we can think, and we don't need violence to shape our world or to decide where humanity is going to go. If violence is the answer, what in the world was the question? I don't personally think violence is the answer to anything. It's kind of an admission of failure in a way. And in that sense, every office that is connected with furthering violence, to the extent that we become a world of peaceful people who will listen and respect each other and love each other and take care of each other, all of the professions we've created to deal with violence will become unnecessary. Granted, this is quite possibly thousands of years in the future. Just because it may take us a while to get there doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue it, when it really is a much better way to be than what we have now. But in contemplating how life is this ongoing journey, and I'm not sure who said it first, but I'm happy to repeat it, that life is a journey, not a destination. It's not that because you're born, you're here and there's nothing more to do. It's a journey between who you are at the beginning of your life and who you will be at the end of your life. That in the end you will know so much more, you will be able to do so much more, you will have thought about and experienced and reflected on so much more. In the truest sense of the word, there will be a much bigger sense of who you are. It's like every experience that you have, every memory you add, is another grain of sand added to a bucket, until this bucket literally overflows with sand. Except, of course, for those who avoid new experiences and avoid discoveries and avoid anything that seems the least bit risky or threatening or dangerous or uncertain. And so that every time life offers them another grain of sand, they jerk their bucket away and say, no, don't put that in my bucket. I don't know what that is. I don't know where it's been. I don't know if it's safe. And in the interest of being safe, when their time runs out, they still have an empty bucket. And I've never wanted to live that way, obviously, which is where, when the opportunity came up to be Sister Who, I said, why not? And so I use symbols and metaphors to nurture others' personal and spiritual growth. And I'm upfront with people that I'm a gay man and um, an occasional bodybuilder, and sometimes the juxtaposition of all these different things is a little confusing to people, and that's okay too. There may be something about that that serves to inspire or encourage their growth in some way, that provokes their curiosity and their wonder, and well, and also gives them the freedom to try new things also, or gives them the permission to try new things. Whether or not they do try new things, of course, is entirely up to them, whoever that person may be. But I do whatever I can. And the song I'd like to share with you today is one I wrote when I was in college, looking at the metaphor of seasons of life and this forward progression of life being a journey and all the different things that happen along the way, and it doesn't always have to be profound. I don't think we should run away from what's profound, but there's times to simply relax and just be, as Madeleine L'Engle says in her book Walking on Water, Reflections on Faith and Art. That we get so caught up in the doing of life that we forget that we're human beings, not human doings. Taking time to just be, to sit on the bank of a river and watch the water go by and not have to judge it as right or wrong, not having to explain it, but just watching it and noticing whatever it may have to say to us. That the babbling of the brook may be a language, telling our heart things that our mind couldn't necessarily comprehend, speaking to us without words, helping us to feel alive in ways that rushing through traffic in a busy city can't necessarily do. But if we don't take time to listen and to learn and to watch and to simply be, we'll miss it. And it will be by the opportunity to be gone. We'll, like Henry David Thoreau said in Walden, coming to the point of death and realizing you've never lived. That whatever accumulation, none of it's going with you. The only thing you can take with you are the memories and the love, the wisdom and the love. Ultimately, consequently, as I pondered all that, I thought to myself, well, life is ultimately about the growth of the soul. But coming back to this moment of awareness in the present. And some people say we need to live in the now, we need to live in the present, because they've seen people who exaggerated the future, that I need to think about where I'm going, and everything is about investing and about what I'm going to become, and they're so focused on the future they don't remember what their past was. I mean, that's something that was brought out in the popular Christmas story, The Christmas Carol, originally written by Charles Dickens, that this character, Ebenezer Scrooge, had totally forgotten where he'd come from. He didn't remember his own childhood memories and had to be reminded of them by the ghost of Christmas past. And then found that he wasn't really even being fully present in the present. The ghost of Christmas present showing him what was going on right around him, that immediately around him, and he wasn't even seeing it. And the ghost of Christmas future showing him, what this is all pointing towards, that Scrooge wasn't really even looking into the future. He was just blind on all three. The thing for my own choices in relating to past, present, future, and trying to strike a healthy balance between them, the metaphor I use is human vision. If one looks only at the present, metaphorically, that's the equivalent of glaucoma, tunnel vision, where we lose our peripheral vision till we can only see what's right in front of us. If one only looks at the past and future and can't see the present, that's the equivalent of macular degeneration, where the center of the eye that is closest to the optic nerve somehow stops functioning. And you can't look straight ahead, but you can see things around the outside of the eye, your peripheral vision. And I met a woman once who had that condition, and she seemed to maneuver just fine, but she couldn't read anything because she couldn't, every time she looked at a word on the page, it would disappear. But if she held it up and tried to read it out of her peripheral vision, there was a minimal amount of comprehension that could go on. So what I'm advocating is we look at past, present, and future as having our full range of vision, that we see what's directly in front of us and we see what's to either side, before us, behind us, above us, below us. We have that peripheral vision that goes around our central vision. Part of what we'll have to notice if we do that, however, is how interconnected everything is, and how, because everything is so interconnected and interdependent, collaboration makes so much more sense than competition. Working with diversity, no matter how different it is, instead of saying, ooh, that's bad, to simply say, that's different, and start a dialogue and allow that other person to tell you what the world looks like from their perspective. What's your story? What does this mean? How did you arrive at this? I really am interested. I'm not trying to judge you. I don't have any agenda for why I'm asking this, other than I want to get to know you. You're something new and different to me, and I need to grow from time to time, so you're an opportunity for me to grow. I'd like to hear your story. And to have that sort of openness toward each other, because there's nothing about the dialogue that compels us to change. It just gives us more interesting things to think about. In any case, the song is simply called Take My Hand. And being aware of the shifting seasons in our life, and being aware that we don't go the journey alone, even when we think we do. Being aware that there is a whole spiritual side of life as well that remains out of sight, but absolutely present with us. Like the wind rustling through the trees. We never ever see it, but we know it's there, and we know it can have a very dramatic effect on how our lives unfold and how our kites fly, how our ships sail. Take my hand and let us find a fragrance fresh and soft and kind, joyous times when life begins, as spring arrives and we enter in. Take my hand and let us hear whispered songs so warm and clear, woods and fields and mountains high, we dance as summer passes by. Take my hand and let us taste the wondrous harvest we've embraced, the tended garden of labors long, grants at last sweet autumn song. Take my hand and let us see, though blinding white the snow may be, restful times to look inside, where winter's hope and peace abide. Take my hand and let us go down a path that few will know, weaving lives of memories, learning how to love and be. And it is in the learning and in regarding each other as a teacher and ourselves as the entire world's students that every moment of life has something to teach, and every moment of life has something to show. And insight and blessing and wisdom is peeking at us from the most unlikely places, peering through the leaves of trees and the faint melody over the din of traffic in the city. That sort of deeper perception to which the heart is especially attuned. So when we care for our own hearts and we care for the hearts of others, we are keeping alive the most valuable and beautiful and important part of humanity. And every occupation and every task and everything that has ever stripped us of our humanity has taken away something that is so essential to our journey. It is not for any person to say who should make the journey and who should not. That would require a much greater wisdom. And so I, for one, am quite content to leave that wisdom in the hands of God. The important thing for us is simply that we do stand up and take each other's hands and be willing to make the journey. That even in not knowing, even in perceiving God as more mystery than comprehension, more mystery than comprehension, there's more that we don't know about God than that we do. And ways in which God remains elusive, frustrating our attempts to scientifically document the existence of God. And part of the reason I think that it is so difficult for science to grapple with something as pervasive and I would say inescapable as the reality of God, it's quite possibly that there are dimensions of us that we have not yet learned to measure. Even the science of psychology is a relatively new science. It's only been around a couple hundred years at the most. There were ways in which we were doing psychological things from the beginning of time, but it's only recent that we learned to begin to study it and measure it and figure out when it's there and when it's not. And even then, especially because we're dealing with something that's not material, mostly it's conjecture. That might be problematic for some, but if you believe in the value of life itself, believing that life has value makes it virtually inescapable. That we are all living by faith. Faith in life to guide itself towards something ever more wondrous. Faith in life itself to find a way to be beautiful even within the most stark and unwelcoming circumstances. And ultimately, in having faith in life, we must have faith in each other and faith in ourselves. That as we take each other's hands and march through this shared space that is our world, that we will find a way to do so that will not be riddled with regret, but rather that will continue the journey, empower the journey. That what we essentially create during each of our individual lives here is one more stepping stone for others after us to use on their journeys. It is not just my journey. It is not just your journey. It is our journey. We are humanity, and humanity is both community and individuality. Thank you for watching and for joining hands with me in a metaphorical sort of way this last half hour.